In Revenge of the Sith, we see Anakin's actions throw the galaxy into a state of turmoil, where the Jedi are dead and the Sith rule everything. Due to Padme's death, her children were left without parents and in need of a safe home far from the reaches of the Empire. Now in the main timeline, we see Obi-Wan take Luke to Tatooine to be raised by the Lars, and Leia to Alderaan to be raised by the Organas. This did eventually work, but the issue with it was that neither child was given sufficient training as they grew up. In fact, they both had no knowledge that they were Force sensitive at all. Something I've always wondered about when theorizing about their upbringing is how things would have changed if they were both trained in the ways of the Force from a young age. But to take it a step further, what if they were trained by Anakin's former apprentice, Ahsoka Tano? This would change the events that we know and love today. As the kids are born, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Bail Organa decide what they're going to do next. They toy with a few different ideas. This was a big decision, and if chosen wrong, the galaxy may never recover. It is ultimately decided that Ahsoka will be the perfect person to raise the children, and act as their mother figure growing up. Both Yoda and Obi-Wan know the type of person Ahsoka is. The fact she left the Jedi Order and followed her own path is almost the reason that she is perfect for this task. She won't corrupt the children with outdated, dogmatic views of the Jedi. Obi-Wan is able to quickly reach out to Ahsoka. These two were close, not nearly as close as say her and Anakin, but they had shared the battlefield on countless occasions and carried much respect for one another. As she arrived, she immediately understood the assignment and responsibility of what was being asked of her. The three discussed Anakin and what happened to him. Ahsoka trembled at the possibility of Anakin being dead. Despite everything, Anakin was Ahsoka's best friend. She couldn't comprehend the fact that he had fallen to the dark side of the Force. Ahsoka says her goodbye to her old friends and leaves the medical bay with the children. Where they were going, only Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Bail Organa would know. As they traveled across the galaxy, she made it to her home world of Sheely, in which she hadn't been in years. Landing on the remote place on the planet, she found a home where the kids will settle down. This would be where they stayed for the foreseeable future, away from distractions, but more importantly, away from any potential risks. The Empire was ruthless, and if they discovered what Ahsoka was doing raising the children of Skywalker, Palpatine would have them slaughtered. The next 2 decades would be spent raising the children. Starting from birth, Luke and Leia completed simple Force training exercises. Things such as raising small rocks and stones, pushing and pulling leaves into the air, and feeling the Force around them. To become a Jedi Master takes time. Years of hard work and dedication to study the Force. Out in the middle of nowhere on Sheely, the kids would have an endless amount of time to train and practice. They were powerful. Their raw talent in the Force was like none other. The Chosen One genetics had allowed them to experience power on a level unknown to any other Jedi in history. Except Anakin, of course. Despite their long training hours, Ahsoka still treated the children as her own and allowed time for fun and relaxation. Luke and Leia considered Ahsoka their real mother without having any knowledge of who their real mother actually was. They became a true family with their years of solitude together. Throughout the years, she would receive the odd visit from Obi-Wan or Bail Organa to check up on them. They couldn't communicate frequently out of risk of the Empire discovering their secret, which meant Obi-Wan was left worried for months at a time. The older they got, the more intense their training became. As they entered their teenage years, training with a lightsaber became more and more frequent. Ahsoka introduced different lightsaber forms and flourishes to get Luke and Leia familiar with their sabers. She primarily taught them both Form 5 fighting style, as her master Anakin Skywalker once taught her. This style focused on taking the defensive capabilities of Form 3 and making it more aggressive to pressure their opponents. They trained for hours every day, perfecting their abilities. In a funny way, Ahsoka was training the children of Skywalker to be able to fight Vader directly. All of her moves and techniques once taught to her by Anakin were direct counters to Darth Vader's large and stable frame. When they were old enough, Ahsoka explained everything to them. Who they were, their importance, their family name, everything. She didn't spare any details. After all these years, Obi-Wan had figured out that Anakin was still alive and was the tyrant Darth Vader in the metal suit, destroying the galaxy. Ahsoka told Luke and Leia this as well. There were no lies and secrets between them. The more they knew, the more powerful they could become. After nearly 20 years of living on Sheely in peace, away from the Empire and plague of everything they could touch, the Empire eventually made their way to Sheely. They made their presence known by destroying a large village nearby Luke and Leia's home. They could see the flames as the smoke traveled for miles. They couldn't sit around and do nothing, whilst innocent people were slaughtered. Ahsoka realized that now was the time to reveal the children to the galaxy. Before they left, she contacted Obi-Wan asking for his assistance in getting off the planet. She knew things were about to get out of hand. The three of them quickly went into the village to help the townsfolk in whichever way they could. As legions of stormtroopers came, the three ignited their lightsabers and began to slice them down. Squad after squad of troopers emerged from the ships and fired upon them. But they had trained for this. Blasters were not going to be enough. They prioritized saving and getting as many civilians out as possible. Whilst Luke and Leia deflected incoming bullets from stormtroopers, Ahsoka was able to gather over 50 surviving village people and help them escape. As they fled, Ahsoka, Luke, and Leia followed to provide more protection against the ruthless Empire. With the discovery of 3 hidden Jedi away on this remote planet, more Imperial forces are sent to the distant planet in search of them. 3 large Star Destroyers are sent to the planet's system in order to lock down and kill the fleeing Jedi. Kenobi is able to reach the planet quickly in order to assist them. Finding them quickly, he commands them to follow them as they go to his ship to evacuate the planet. However, as they make their way to the landing platform ready to escape, Darth Vader appears before them, with his lightsaber already ignited. This was the first time Ahsoka and Obi-Wan had seen their old friend in nearly 20 years. Emotions would rush to the surface, but they had to contain them. Vader scowled at the 4 Jedi. He was ready to kill them all. There was no other way out of this for the Jedi. They had to fight. The 4 of them ignite their lightsabers and attack Vader. This was the first time Luke and Leia had ever been in a real duel. They were inexperienced, and fighting Lord Vader, one of the most powerful Sith to ever live, was dangerous. This caused Ahsoka and Obi-Wan to focus a lot of their energy into protecting Luke and Leia, instead of providing offensive threats to Vader. Vader was extremely powerful. He had no hint of light side energy within himself. Vader was able to separate the Jedi from one another, making it so that he only had to fight 1 or 2 of them at a time. At this moment in Vader's mind, he saw Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, and then 2 other random Jedi who they had obviously helped for whatever reason. As he continued to strike, he weakened their defenses more. Vader was able to use the Force to levitate Luke into the air before throwing him into the wall, causing immense pain. As he tried to finish the kill on Luke by swinging the blade through his stomach, Ahsoka blocked and pushed him back. It was clear to Kenobi that Vader was far too powerful at this moment. What we have to remember is that Vader has spent nearly 2 decades hunting Jedi and killing them. He is literally an expert in the field of slaughtering Jedi. He has recognized their patterns and movements and how to exploit them. This makes it far easier for him to duel. Obi-Wan knew that if Luke and Leia were going to live, he would have to give himself up. He pushed the children and Ahsoka away and leaped at Vader, screaming at the children to leave. Obi-Wan couldn't last long on his own. Very quickly, Vader made it through the old man's defenses and pushed him to the ground, destroying his lightsaber in the process. Obi-Wan was about to be killed. In one last attempt to save Kenobi, Luke and Leia scream out to their father to stop, immediately stealing Vader's attentions as he motions his head to look at the teenagers, realizing that these two extremely powerful yet young Force users are actually his children. At this moment, it means nothing to him. He simply looks back at the defeated Kenobi and cuts his head off with his lightsaber. Kenobi's head hits the floor as his final breath escapes his cold lips. It was done. Vader had eliminated his greatest enemy, his once best friend and master, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ahsoka was thrown into a state of shock and panic. Anakin was ruthless. This was not the kind and caring master that she remembered. She had to get the twins out of there. Climbing into their ship, they flew off the ground to evade Anakin. But as they believe they've got out of harm's way and into orbit, Vader reaches out with his hand and stops their ship mid-air. It freezes and begins to shake. Slowly, they are pulled closer to the surface and back into the reaches of Vader. But Ahsoka leaps to her feet and propels her hands forward, cutting Vader's grip from the ship and sending him flying backwards. They were away, flying into the distance and barely escaping with their lives. But Obi-Wan was not as fortunate. Luke, Leia, and Ahsoka continued to evade the Empire for several years, using their skills and training to survive on their own. Meanwhile, the Death Star, a massive battle station capable of destroying entire planets, had become known throughout the galaxy as a symbol of the Empire's power and cruelty. The Empire would judge planets, deciding whether they were worthy of surviving in their new society. Trillions of people were murdered by their futile tests. Their power was endless, and it would be incredibly difficult to stop them. But along with the Empire growing large, the rebellion had also made tremendous strides in regards to numbers and power. Determined to stop the Empire and avenge Obi-Wan's death, Luke, Leia, and Ahsoka joined the Rebel Alliance. Ahsoka used her knowledge and experience to train the Rebel pilots and soldiers, while Luke and Leia continued to hone their skills in the Force. This was a dangerous time. Now Luke and Leia, the only true hopes left in the galaxy, were placed in harm's way once again. But they were ready for whatever hardships they may face, including their father, who had now spent the better part of 3 years searching for them. He was furious at the Emperor for not telling them they were alive. I mean, when he really thought about it, it made no sense. He killed Padme when she was still pregnant, so how could he have 2 children? But he thwarted these thoughts from his brain. This was the first time that he had thought of her in decades, really thought of her. He hated the pain that it still brought him, but he had to find them. He had to find the truth. When the Rebel fleet received word of the Death Star's location, they knew this was the only time they could attempt to secure victory and peace for the galaxy. Their fighters would attack the Death Star. With all of their firepower and might, surely they could bring an end to the Empire. Ahsoka was one of the only people to know the true power of the Empire, of Vader and Palpatine. She knew that for true peace, Vader and Palpatine would have to be killed. And so, Luke, Leia, and Ahsoka would turn themselves over to the Empire and be brought to the Emperor when the Rebel fleet attacked the Death Star. The pilots entered orbit with Han Solo, a smuggler who somehow found himself caught in an all-out war.
V1 checking in. V2 checking in. V8 reporting in.
The rest of the fleet called their names as they began their first attack run on the Death Star, firing their weapons at turrets and different weaponry systems before the TIE fighters entered the battle. This was an all-out dogfight.
V3 watch out! Ah! I'll help V7. They're all over me! Ah!
As the 3 Jedi were brought to the bridge on the Death Star, Vader and the Emperor greeted them. Palpatine was a master of tactics and manipulation. He wanted to test his new prizes. The Emperor held their 3 blades in the palm of his hand, stroking them uncomfortably. But instead of sentencing them to death, he instead tossed his sabers back into their hands and commanded them to ignite them. Standing alongside Vader, they ignited their lightsabers. In Palpatine's mind, he wanted to turn Luke and Leia to the dark side. As for Ahsoka, he would make sure she dies. She is their main tether to the light, and so he will sever it. The battle begins, and it is fast and fierce. Everyone in the room has a motive, each as powerful as the next. The speed was like no other duel. Colors flash from all corners of the room. Blue, green, red, and even white echoed of all four corners of the battle station. Vader took this opportunity to face Ahsoka once again. He taught her everything she knew, and so he also knew her weaknesses. As they fought, he found an opening and sliced her through the stomach. Ahsoka was dead, and so the fury of the Skywalker children was unleashed. Screams bellowed towards their father and the Emperor. Ahsoka was like a mother to them. No, she was their mother. From the first day in this world, she had looked after and cared for them. And now she is gone forever. Anger drove their neck swings with their lightsabers. Palpatine was ecstatic by the rage and anger that was being displayed by the children. He required this rage if they were to ever turn to the dark side. Under this control of rage, Luke uses the Force to send Vader into the wall, exiting him from the fight. However, when a being untrained in the dark side acts on impulse and rage, they are left vulnerable. Just like Anakin against Obi-Wan on Mustafar so many years ago, Palpatine's speed and experience allows him to gain an upper hand on the two Jedi as he forces them to the ground, disarming them in the process. Now they were defenseless, and without a teacher, Palpatine places his saber back up his sleeve and shoots bolts of lightning at them. Screams of agony and pain radiate from their mouths as they are engulfed with the electrical feel of lightning. The rebel pilots continue to make progress outside of the battle station, destroying TIE fighters and slowly getting closer to the station's main reactor.
Go! Go, go, go!
The rebel pilots enter the main reactor and begin to fire upon the Death Star, attempting to blow it up for good. It was at this moment that Palpatine made them choose: join the dark side or die. Luke looked up with bravery. He chose to die, and so did Leia. They would never fall to the dark side. It was the opposite of everything Ahsoka had stood for. Vader was stepping back to his feet as he watched this unfold. His mind was playing tricks on him. Thoughts of Padme and even Obi-Wan flashed throughout his head. He remembered his life before the metal suit, before all the sadness and anger. He envied to be back there again. Palpatine raised his fingertips to blast them with lightning again, to finish their lives once and for all. He didn't need them anymore. They were just a luxury to him, a trophy. But just as the Emperor was about to strike the killing blow, something unexpected happened. Vader, with thoughts of his old life in his mind, turned back to the light side and blocked the Emperor's attack. With a final burst of strength, Vader struck down the Emperor, killing him and bringing an end to the Sith's rule over the galaxy. As they left the battle station, the triumphant rebel fleet delivered the final blow to the Death Star as it blew into a billion pieces. Peace was finally attained. Their mission was complete. Vader was brought back to the rebel base where he was questioned and ultimately tried in court. But it was his children that bailed him out. They explained how it was Vader who saved them, and therefore saved the entire galaxy. He wasn't forgiven, but he was given another chance to make amends for the atrocities that he had committed as a Sith Lord. As for Luke and Leia, they continued to train and hone their skills in the Force. They established the new Jedi Order, with Vader as one of their most trusted advisors and teachers. Together, they worked to bring peace and stability to the galaxy, using their skills and knowledge to help those in need and defend against any remaining remnants of the Empire. Years passed, and Luke and Leia grew into powerful Jedi Masters in their own right. They continued to lead the new Jedi Order, spreading the teachings of the Force and protecting the galaxy from darkness. And so, with Ahsoka by their side as children, to help nurture and grow their young minds, Luke and Leia lived happily ever after, dedicating their lives to the preservation of peace and protection of all life in the galaxy. If you enjoyed today's video, you must watch What If Ahsoka Went to Mustafar instead of Obi-Wan, or What If Obi-Wan Joined Count Dooku. Please check out our Patreon if you would like to support the channel. The link is in the description below. All proceeds go towards making better videos for you guys. Thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you.